Welcome to Even Just a Little, where we explore the beautiful gift of choice, tiny trusts toward big freedom, those moment-to-moment decisions we make that build life. Today, I'm so excited for you to meet our guest, Ashley Jones, who is the founder of the Momento Foundation, which is a nonprofit whose mission is to help people heal in grief. I'm very eager for you to hear her story. And also, she's a speaker. She's an author who has a book currently being in the publishing process of When You Can't See the Light. So we'll talk a little bit about that also. I want people to be able to find that. But I'm just very eager to get to know you a little better, Ashley, because I think we have a similar heart for offering hope to people and in different ways. And so welcome, 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 Ashley Jones.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
So let's start by tell us a little bit about let's tell us a little bit about the Momento Foundation, and then I'd like to go straight to how you got to this point, because I think that's crucial in building something that is this much of a gift to humanity, honestly.
Thank you. The Memento Foundation started under the name Love Not Lost. So if people are Googling, that might come up too. But it started as Love Not Lost, and the idea is that photographs are a beautiful way to honor and remember loved ones. They're an incredible support tool in grief. Oftentimes when we lose a loved one, the first thing we turn to is photographs, right? For the memorial service, for the funeral, for just our own comfort. And yet, when people know that they're going to lose a loved one, when they have a terminal diagnosis, oftentimes photography is the last thing on people's mind, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also a luxury, right? There are a lot of people who can't afford a professional portrait session. And so I had this idea through my own personal experience through loss, which we can get into in a minute. And I was like, wow, everyone deserves this opportunity, especially if you know that your loved one is dying, right? If you have been given that terminal diagnosis and time is short, like, gosh, let's preserve memories while we can, because you can't go back and get it once they're gone. And so that's how it started, was just Love Not Lost, just taking pictures of people photographing or people facing a terminal diagnosis. And then we've since grown, and that's kind of the rebrand to Memento Foundation, of helping people heal in grief in general, providing tools and resources and community, creating events to advocate for conversations around loss and healing, and just creating more of an overall space to help people heal in grief and rebuild after loss.
Yes. Well, that's one of the fascinating, I think one of the really, the photographs, and it's at no cost to the families.
That's right.
It's at no cost to the families. And I think that's an enormous gift that just continues to give and help that loved one remain a piece of the family or the friends. But these resources that you provide, there's such quality. I mean, I looked through them, the books. You recommend books, people suffering, struggling, working their way through grief, podcasts, documentaries. And I found it really fascinating and helpful words. I think you put it words that help, because people, we don't know what to say when a lot of times when we're in this situation where someone has had a great loss, so we say the wrong thing, and those words are so helpful. So these resources, and I don't know where this will take us exactly, but I think it's very important that we learn how you got here, how you discovered that these photographs are so precious.
Yeah. So my husband and I got married young. We had been dating through college, got married after college. And just a year into our marriage, had a oops surprise pregnancy. And so we were like, okay, we'll be young parents. We were 24 when we got pregnant and 25 when I had her. And it was obviously surprising when you're not planning and trying for a pregnancy. You're like, oh, okay, my life is changing forever now. And so, but then it's like, okay, even though this was unexpected and not something I signed up for, like I can still, get excited about it and enjoy this journey. And so I was very excited to become a young mom and explore that adventure. And I ended up doing a natural childbirth. They sent us home from the hospital. Everything was great. And then at 1 month old, I noticed something wasn't quite right. So her right arm would come up kind of like a chicken wing. And she was born in November. So, like, we were keeping her swaddled really tight because, babies are used to 98.6 degrees or, body temperature.
Yeah.
And so to be born in the winter, I feel like is just cruel. And so I was keeping her really swaddled and warm. So I was like, well, maybe it's because I've just swaddled her too tight. I don't know. Brought it up to the pediatrician, and he was like, something's not quite right, but I don't know what it is. And he was kind of, asking different questions. And then he was like, well, I'll send you to a brachial plexus specialist because she could have had a shoulder injury at birth. And I was like, man, I felt everything because it was a natural delivery. Like as soon as her head was out, she slipped right out. And he's like, well, I don't know where else to send you. So we'll start there. And I was like, okay. But by the time we got to the brachial plexus specialist, her other arm was impacted. So her other arm kind of rotated inward and just hung limp as if it were completely detached at the shoulder.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? Because her other arm is more contracted and stiff, like a chicken wing. And even if I pull it down, it just slowly comes back up, like seemingly without her control. And long story short, we ended up, the brachial plexus specialist asked a whole bunch of questions. Our pediatrician called us like 30 minutes after that appointment and was like, it's not good. And I think something's like really, really wrong. And I was like, okay, tell me. Because in my mind, I had worked with severely handicapped kids when I was in high school. I went to the local elementary school to volunteer. And I had seen cerebral palsy, I'd seen epilepsy, I'd seen a lot of other like really serious conditions. And cerebral palsy with the contractures, I was like, maybe it's something like that. And so I'm thinking in my head, like a lifetime of physical therapy, maybe some surgeries, that was my worst case scenario. And I was like, could you just tell me what it is? Because I'm going to drive myself crazy just, coming up with possibilities. And he's like, worst case scenario, we're looking at 5 different conditions. They're all acronyms, usually 3 letters, and here they are. And he listed them off. And at the time, we didn't have smartphones. So he was like, if you make the really bad decision to go home and Google these, here's my personal cell phone number. You can call me anytime.
Mm.
And I was like, oh God, that's bad, right? Because no pediatrician in their right mind gives a first time mom their personal cell phone number
True.
and tells them to call anytime. Um, so, of course, I get home, I Google, and she had every symptom for SMA, which stands for spinal muscular atrophy, which is very similar to Lou Gehrig's disease or ALS. Muscles degenerate and there's no cure. So that's really when we knew, we'd be lucky to see her first birthday. And she was 2 months old at the time that we figured that out. Um, so it was like, okay, like we have to figure out how to make the most of this, right? Like, because the only other option is that we roll over and die or like have a pity party for ourselves or stay in this really low depressive state.
Yeah.
But like she's still here, right? And so like how do we treasure every second with her while she's here and then save the depression and the pity party for later, right?
You
Um,
know, I think I'd like to interject here because
yeah.
this podcast is about those choices,
Yeah.
those tiny choices that actually build our life. You could have taken the other route. You could have chosen, but wouldn't you regret that now? Because
Yeah.
you chose to savor every moment that you had with her.
Yeah.
And it really uh, obviously impacted that time with her, but also your life after you didn't have her with you anymore. So, and you're touching lives because of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
continue on.
And during that time, friends were, we were 25. All of our
Mm.
friends, like none of us were taught what do you do when someone's dying, right? That's not a course that you get offered. So it's like, people didn't know what to say, they didn't know what to do. A lot of our friends disappeared, like just straight up fell off the face of the planet. But we
Do
had
you
a Oh, go
do
ahead.
you think that's because they just didn't know how to
Oh,
they
for
didn't know.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was this fear of like, oh my God, this is such a horrific thing. Like, what do I do? And there's this not knowing. So it's like, well, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And so then it just paralyzes people in fear. Right. And so now, obviously, like the friends who I've reconnected with, they'll admit they're like, we know that that was the wrong thing to do because we just left you abandoned.
Yeah.
But we honestly like didn't know what to do. And I was like, okay, like this is one of the ways I can help our society because like I can
Yes.
offer training and I can offer resources and I can offer tools to give people, like help other people show up for the people who are
And
hurting.
and you do. And
Yeah.
on your website, simply going to your website of the Momento Foundation, people can find those words to stay
Yeah.
in a that allows you to stay in a relationship and
Mhm.
love these hurting people. So, yeah.
And one of the first tools that I created was actually just a little postcard that on one side said, "How can I love you better?" And on the other side was check boxes of like, bring you a meal, sit and talk, grab coffee together, walk your dog, whatever, check your mail. And people could, hand that out. Someone could give it back. But obviously, like, we're in the digital age now. And so I had an
That
amazing,
doesn't matter. People still, that's the same checklist. People
yes.
need that
So we
checklist.
still
Yes.
have the postcard, but we created a website called howcaniloveYoubetter.com. And
Oh,
it is that offering of like a custom, hey, I see that you're hurting. I actually want to show up for you, right? Because so many times people say, let me know if you need anything or call if you want help or whatever, but no one actually does. And that puts the responsibility back on the grieving person. So the howcaniloveYoubetter.com says, hey, here are things I'm willing to do for you. And that way you can choose too if you want to involve money, if you want to buy them dinner or send them gas cards or, food gift certificates or whatever. Or if you're like, I'm really tight on budget, but I can come cut your grass, I can walk your dog, I can clean your floors, like, so you can customize those offerings and say, here's a list of what I can do. Let me know what would be most helpful for you. And then we have a calendar plugin that also says when, and then you can follow through on that offer. So,
love in action.
yes.
Love in action. You're putting you are, I think you called, offering and
Mhm.
innovative tools and resources. I mean, touchable things tangible things you can do that because we freeze. We don't know
Yeah.
what to do, even though we want many times we want to, but it's
Yeah.
easier. So this is off the charts wonderful.
Thank
I didn't
you.
know about this. I didn't know
Yeah.
loveinaction.com.
Oh,
Oh,
howcaniloveYoubetter.com.
oh, how can I love? Yeah, I
Yeah.
just made
Mhm.
up my own website. How can
I
I
like
love
that though.
you?
I like it.
Yeah, yeah. No, how can I know? Much better to
Yeah.
be turned together.
HowcaniloveYoubetter.com.
Yeah, love that.
So,
Yeah.
so that was one of the things that I was like, oh, I need to create something to help people show up because even, like you think like, oh, maybe older people know better because they've been through more life, but they haven't been taught either. So it's like I had people at church who literally saw me walking down the hall and like their eyes got big, like, oh gosh, here she comes. And I would literally see them turn and like run the other way. And I was like, cool. Great. Like, so glad I feel loved and supported. And
Yes.
obviously there were people there who were amazing, but it was like very evident like who was not okay with pain and grief and then who had been through it and like kind of knew. And one
We've
of our,
been
oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
well, we've been through some mental health issues, years of difficulty, and I experienced the same thing because
Yeah.
people don't know what to say to you, so they they see you
Especially if
and
there's a stigma involved, if it's like drugs
exactly,
or alcohol or
yes.
suicidal ideation, or, it's like, oh, like, I don't know, it's so scary. I don't, so
So they just hide from you, and
yes,
that is very lonely
it
because
is.
it's a hard time, and you need all the help you can get. So
That's right.
this is fabulous, just
Yeah.
fabulous.
And howcaniloveyoubetter.com is meant for anything. Like it doesn't have to be just a death. It can be a tough time or a diagnosis or childbirth, where it's like, hey,
Yep.
I see you're going through it and you need some extra help.
Trauma, any sort
Yeah.
of trauma. I think let's talk a little bit about that because I think it's a misconception. It's becoming more widely known that we all suffer from grief.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, obviously, the loss of a child, most of us don't suffer in that that deeply.
Mhm.
But there are various forms of grief, and it sounds like howcaniloveyou.com addresses all sorts of. Do you
Yeah.
talk about that on the website, or do you address that, or
Yeah, so the suggested verbiage is like, "Hey, I see you're going through a tough time." Right? So it's like
right?
it can just be anything. And grief, you know, so grief and trauma are different. They're somewhat related, but they're also similar in that they're taboo, right? We don't talk about it.
Right.
So so I believe that all trauma includes grief, but not all grief includes trauma.
Gotcha.
And
Yes.
so, because we all do experience trauma and we all went through trauma collectively through the pandemic, right? There was
Mhm.
a loss of lives, a loss of sense of safety. A lot of people lost jobs. There was so much collective loss and grief and trauma through that. Um, and because it was so unknown, there was this sense of panic, like, we're not okay, right? And like I'm not okay as an individual, and like our society is not okay, the world is not okay. And so depending on how you're able to process that information and regulate your own nervous system is kind of how intense that reaction and response was from your body on the level of trauma you experienced, and
Gotcha.
obviously some of the individual things that people went through, some more than others. So with that, I do think that there's a level of care and attention that we need to take when we've been through traumatic loss. And so that's part of what my book is about, is a trauma informed guide to surviving loss. Because if it's just grief without trauma, you can approach it differently and get positive results. But if there is an element of trauma involved, and this is where I really saw a gap in society of like, a lot of people would say, oh, you experienced a loss, go talk to a therapist, right? But if trauma was involved in that, talking to a therapist might not feel safe. And it might not be the way that your body needs support in that moment. And so it's not going to actually be helpful. And so I've heard a lot of people say, oh, well, I talked to a therapist and it didn't really work, so I gave up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there are so many other ways to connect with your body and connect with the world around you and your pain, and support yourself beyond just like talking to a therapist. One, there are specific trauma therapists that are different than normal therapists or grief therapists. And so that's really huge because the approaches are different. But
Mhm.
even then, there's like somatic work that we can do, to breath work, regulating our nervous system, making sure that we feel
Yes.
safe in our bodies and then in our environment around us before we engage with that deep emotional work.
Mhm.
And that's important in trauma, is this idea of safety and control. And that's has gone largely, like, I don't want to say unnoticed, but just like overlooked when I hear people talk about healing and grief. but I do feel like there's so many elements that can be the whole spectrum of trauma, right? Like little traumas and really intense trauma that impacts the way that your body responds. And so, like even for me, like when we lost our daughter, um, so I'll go back just a minute and say one of our friends did show up for us and gifted us a professional portrait session. And so that's really the how we got to Love Not Lost was this a friend had gifted us the portrait session, and those photographs truly created that safe space for me more than anything else. Like those, honestly, the photographs are more helpful for me than my grief therapist, because my grief therapist was there just talking to me, and the photos really let me feel things, right? The photos let me sit there and ugly cry when I lost her, and let me, just fall apart without any judgment or expectation or need to get better, right? I could just be. And that is the most beautiful gift in grief, is when you can find a space where you can just be whatever you need to be in that moment. So that was really what inspired me to give portrait sessions away, because I was a photographer myself. And I was like, this was a beautiful gift to me. I can give this gift to other people. And my husband was like, I love you and your giving heart, but we're going to go bankrupt. Please stop. So all that to say, that is what led to me starting the nonprofit, because I was like, I believe people will help me give it all away. And through donations, and the families that we serve who can afford to make a gift back, hopefully we can keep doing this for a long time. And it's been 10 years now. So,
Yeah, what a fascinating, what a beautiful story.
yes.
Yes. Well, I'm very intrigued because I had no idea we were going to line up so much, because my mission is all about offering hope
Mhm.
through beauty, whether
Mhm.
it's nature or art. And I use the art to bring people to a place, a beginning place of being, which
Yes.
is what you're talking about, the importance of being. But also, I'm a yin yoga instructor. So I've studied deeply the power of meditation, being still, which is what you're talking about, but also the breath and the body, the power of using that somatic. Your body will help you so much. Just that knowledge for people to know that that's an option. And that
Yes.
sounds like you're talking about these same similar type things in your book for working
Absolutely.
through grief. So that sounds like lots of tiny trusts to me, just
Yeah.
little choices. So can you just share maybe whatever your top four out of your book that you think people could really use, and then
Yeah.
go get that book when it comes out. So
Yeah. Well, I love what you said too, just about this like trust, right? Because I think, so often we're taught to look outside of ourselves for help. So, when you get sick, it's like, let me go to the doctor. Let me, take this pill. Let me do this thing, right? And
yes,
not that that's bad. Like sometimes that's absolutely necessary, but that tends to be the default immediate reaction, right?
right.
Instead
Hmm.
of saying, like, what is this pain trying to tell me? And like,
Oh, that's right. That's so good.
yeah,
If you could just do that first, what
yeah,
is this pain trying to tell me? And a little previous to that, you need to know that discomfort is part of your life. It's not, so if you can know that, then you can look at it. I like to put it like, look at it more of an opportunity or a doorway
yes.
to walk through, and go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's this, if you look at any drug commercial, which are crazy all over the place,
I agree.
which is like a whole nother problem in America.
Yeah.
But any drug commercial you hear, it's like, it's all about taking away the pain, right? But then it's not actually solving the pain, it's just removing the pain from your consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And it's not really addressing the root issue. And if you listen closely to those drug commercials, you get like a slew of crazy side effects, right?
And that's legitimate. I mean, I think all of us can attest to that. Either we've experienced that or we know someone who has had really adverse effects too. Not
Yes.
that it isn't good sometimes, like I
Right.
think we're in agreement, but it doesn't have to be the first thing you do. Yeah.
And sometimes the trade-offs are worth it, right? So if
Yes. Right.
like if you're battling cancer and you're taking this drug that's going to help you move through cancer, then it's like, okay, maybe I can afford to get sick and throw up and do these things, right? Because I on the other side that is a worthy trade-off. But if I'm like just trying to get a better night's sleep and I'm taking this drug and it's causing me to potentially get cancer and have high blood pressure and risk of stroke and depression and suicidal ideation and explosive diarrhea and all the other things that they list in the potential side effects, you're like, I don't think that's worth it to me, right? So, all that to say, listening to your pain and starting to build that trust with your body, because it's not taught in America and it's not taught in our society to honor the wisdom that our bodies hold.
Yes.
And one of the things I talk about most, probably consistently throughout, is that our bodies are designed to heal. So if you think about it, if you get a little paper cut, right, you're like, ow, that hurt, right, when it happens. And then you kind of look down and you're like, wow, okay, man, that like really hurt. Maybe you rub it out. And then you go about your day, right? And before you know it, you look down maybe like a day later and you can barely see it. Subconsciously, your body has already mended the wound, had blood cells rushing to the area to like clot and make sure, no infection forms. Then your new skin grows, and then all of a sudden you're healed. Now, if your femur busts through your leg, right, and your bone breaks and you have a bone sticking out, you're like, okay, that's not going to heal on its own, typically, right? So you get a doctor to reset the bone, maybe put some screws or nails or something in there to hold it in place. But even then, once they stitch you back up, your body takes back over, right? The bones grow back, blood vessels, nerves, all of that grows back, new skin cells. And so ultimately, like our bodies want to be healed. And that's the same for emotional stuff too, right? So if someone comes up to me and they're like, man, Ashley, like that was a horrible thing that, your art is super ugly and, whatever. Like that could be like a paper cut to me where I'm like, ow, that kind of stings a little bit. But at the end of the day, like I'm moving on, right? And it didn't bother me too bad. But sometimes, like when I lose my daughter, it's like my femur bursts through my leg and my arteries in risk of bleeding out. And I have all this, help that I need. And I can't do it by myself. And so, but even then, right, that like I take the care and I get the help that I need. And then eventually my body starts to work with me again to be whole and to heal. And so that's not to say emotionally that like you ever like get over it. I hear people talk about grief in that kind of verbiage. And there is no getting over a loss when it's someone that you loved because you'll always miss that person. You'll always wish they were still here with you. Um, but it doesn't always have to be so painful, right? That raw break, that raw wound does heal, but it's still there, right? Like I'm always going to have a scar on my femur or on my thigh where my femur burst through, right? Like,
Yes.
so that's kind of how I think of emotional pain. It's like sometimes we really need outside help to help us reset, get back to a place that we can manage, and then we can trust ourselves, use our intuition, listen to our bodies, and work together with our body to get back to a whole and healthy place.
Yes. Well, I think you had I read somewhere you talked about um sometimes we deal with these pains by avoiding, by numbing, or by checking out.
Mhm.
And what you are offering people, because if we all do that, we lose contact with ourselves and we don't function it's harder to do these things you're talking about. But also we lose, I mean, it's bigger than just my pain here.
Yeah.
We lose our connection to ourselves. And I say to divine love, God,
Yes.
and each other.
That's
I mean,
right.
if we check out or we don't, and to me, addiction type practices are just an avoidance. It's a way of
Coping.
avoiding
Yeah.
coping that pain. So, I mean, learning to do these things that you're talking about, it's a game changer for our, I mean, I think it's a big game changer for the world, frankly.
Absolutely. I
one
agree.
one person at a time, my relationship with you, my relationship with my friend, my
That's right.
child, and then that. But it all starts. I mean, when you can't see the light, I mean, the light's there. So you're offering that light through. I mean, I can't wait to read your book. I really can't.
Yeah.
But um, so I think we can wind this up. I could talk to you for hours. Maybe we can do this again when your
Yeah.
book
Let's
comes
do it.
out. I would love to. But I like to ask if there is one choice that you feel like you've made in your life that really impacted the course of your life, or maybe it's something you choose on a regular basis that just maybe it's the choice that impacts your day and the
Yeah.
people around you. And maybe it is something that you write about in your book, and let us know if if I suspect it may be, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The book is, I mean, it is a survival guide to grief, and I have shorter sections to walk people through like day by day. So it's small chunks that are digestible.
Uh-huh.
But I think, one of the things I talk about in my book to answer your question is like choosing love over fear.
Mhm.
And one of the things, so I don't know, the age of the audience listening, but I grew up with a mom who was like incredibly fear motivated. So it was like I would go to, we'd be at Steinmart, right? And there'd be like those racks of clothes that are like circles, and they'd have like the coats all around the circle. And I thought it'd be really funny to like hide in the middle of that and stay silent and like play hide and seek with my mom without telling her. Um, and so she would like panic, right? That like someone stole me or that I ran off and disappeared. Um, and so, long story short, she would be like, Ashley, you can't do that because like someone could steal you and chop you up in little bits and I never get you back. Right. Or like, oh, don't do that because this horrible thing could happen. Right. And she was really trying to protect me, and out of love was trying to protect me. But her main motivator was fear. Right. And so she passed that on to me. And so, what I learned as I became an adult was like, oh my gosh, a lot of my choices are fear based, right? And that fear is the driving motivator instead of love. And ultimately, I believe, and I do talk about this in my book, and I quote some other PhDs that ultimately, our decisions come down to love or fear. And there are other emotions that are contained in that. But ultimately, there's the root of love or fear. And I think when I became aware of that and then started making the conscious decisions to ask myself in that decision making process
Mhm.
to say, what am I afraid of? What's the worst that could happen? What's the loving thing to do? And how can I love myself and other people better through this? And that's ultimately the driving question of Memento Foundation is how can we love people better? And that's why I created the howcaniloveyoubetter.com, because in grief, especially when we let fear be the motivator, we don't show up, right? We're afraid of saying the wrong thing. We're afraid of doing the wrong thing. We're afraid of our own feelings. We're afraid of pain. But when we choose love, we are able to create that safe presence, right? And that safe um, support for ourselves and other people.
I
And
love that, Ashley. Yes. That's
when
beautiful.
we do
It's
show up for
beautiful.
each other. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's an energetic feeling too, right? So like you can tell without me even saying a word if I walk into the room and I'm afraid, or if I walk into the room and I'm focused on loving you.
Yeah. And that's a choice.
Mm.
Well, that's what, yeah, but it's a time, it seems tiny, but it affects, it affects your life, but without saying a word, walking into a room, it affects the room. Love
Yeah.
never fails. Yeah. Wow. I have so loved chatting with you. What a beautiful, beautiful foundation, and what a wonderful way to spend your life. And I'm genuinely sorry you had to go through
Yeah. Thank
the
you.
pain to get to this, but I know you're touching a lot of lives just from the few moments that have touched my life. So
Thanks, Sherri.
thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope we can stay in touch. Let me know
I
when
would
your
love
book is out and or getting close, and let's do this again. So
that. Okay. Yeah, it should be this summer, and I would love to send you a
okay.
copy.
Okay. Please do. Please
Okay.
do. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherri.
Hope to see you again. Hope our paths keep crossing.
Sounds
Bye
good.
bye. Thanks so much for joining us on Even Just a Little.